ASMR TV. Today I'm here on behalf of TrendsActive to tell you a bit about trends. And the question that I'd like to ask you guys is, what is the most important trend in your industry? Now, we've been asking this question to a lot of our clients, and I think 80 or 90% of the times they will mention some sort of a technology. So the biggest trend for the next coming years is artificial intelligence, blockchain, big data, these kind of things. And we've been thinking about this at TrendsActive, and we believe that we should talk a little bit less about technology trends and a bit more about what business is truly about, and that is understanding people. We need to understand our customers in order to serve them and serve their needs better than our competitors. That's what really provides business success. So in the next 15 minutes I'd like to share some of our insights that will help you to understand consumer behavior and today's consumers better. Now, what are the most important insights from our trend database? Study sociocultural trends, we have 10 trends. And these 10 trends are divided in 3 groups. Group 1, gender trends. We look at how men and women of today change. Second group, generation trends. So how do younger people, how do older people behave? What is driving their needs? How does that affect their consumer behavior? And the third group are the societal trends. And these are trends that actually affect the behavior of all genders and all generations. So for example, our trend about lack of trust. It seems that lots of consumers, whether these are male or female, older or younger people, they don't really trust in big brands or big corporates. So they all have a lack of trust. Now let me share some of the most important insights from these 3 big groups to hopefully teach you something new. So highlighting the first group, gender trends, the core thing of what we see happening is the feminization of society. So what we see is that traditional gender roles are changing. Back in the days, mommy was at home. Nowadays, mommy is also making careers. That means that often daddy is also at home, and daddy also has to embrace new female values. For some men that feels a bit uncomfortable, so what they do is they counter-react. They grow a big beard, take a man cave and show their manlyhood. But what you should understand as a brand is that you should also embrace more new female values. Or that you should join the counter trend if you're really targeting men that are avoiding these things happening. Generation trends are one of my favorite trends. Why? Because they're very actionable. It's a very pragmatic way of segmenting a target group. Now, when understanding a generation, when you want to understand a generation, you have to look at what sociologists call the formative years. And the formative years is the period between someone's 10th and 25th birthday. And everything that happens in that period of time in anyone's life is defining how people will look at life for the rest of their life. So if we want to understand baby boomers, then we have to go back to their formative years, summer of love, these kind of things, protest generation, to really understand why they behave in a certain way, even now. And to give you a crash course in generation thinking, what you see is that everything that happens in that formative years differs per generation. So baby boomers, for example, grew up in a very economic prosperous times, whereas Generation X has experienced lots of financial crises. So you can imagine that the effect of these things happening on their behavior makes that they have a completely different mindset towards, for example, financial stability. And it's also something that they teach their kids. So insights that we derive from the field of science called pedagogy, I find it a very difficult word in English, but the way we raise our kids, really gives us beautiful insights on why people behave in a certain way. So baby boomers have raised millennials. Generation X is raising Generation Z. Now what we see is that because baby boomers are full of love, peace, happiness and lots of optimism, that they also give that optimistic feeling to their millennial kids. Saying, you know, millennial, if you want to follow your passion, please do so and be happy in life. Millennials come from very small families, on average 1.7 kids per family in Europe, for example. Which means that these baby boomers, lots of economic prosperity, lots of financial wealth, were able to divide all their money stuff attention over just 1.7 kids. So these millennials tend to be a little bit spoiled sometimes. It's not something that they've invented themselves, it's the way they've been raised. Now Generation X is raising Generation Z in a completely different way. Generation X saw lots of financial crisis, but also corporate scandals and political scandals happening during their formative years, so they're kind of skeptical. It's a generation that really works hard, they're very pragmatic in how they approach life. And it's also something that they teach their kids. The kids of today are often told that they're the first generation that will not have a better future than previous generations. Now, factfully, this is wrong information. It's probably not true because we live in the best times ever and it seems that we are working on quite a bright world. But the dystopian views of the future of the world is really shared from the Generation X generation to their kids. So, for example, the parenting style of baby boomers is called helicopter parenting, which means they hover around, allow their millennials to follow their passion and just be happy. Whereas Generation X is also called stealth fighter parenting. So what they do is they not just hover around, they are actually war machines that you don't see on the radar, but when something happens they'll strike and manage their kids to move in the right direction. So the difference between millennials and Generation Z, when you talk about younger generations, is that millennials tend to be more me-centric and very optimistic, whereas Generation Z is much more realistic, less naive than millennials. They have a much more future-oriented mindset and they really want to make things happen. So by understanding these deep drivers of human behavior and how about the times in which they have been raised, you can really see the differences between these generations. Now let's look at the societal trends. We have 4 of them. Lack of trust, connected society, I already mentioned a little bit, but lack of trust is really about how brands can create a stronger bond with their customers. So how, and one of the key things in there is to build trust. Now we've been researching this trust phenomena for a long time, but we really took a deep dive last year and we found out how you can actually build trust between companies and customers. And there are 3 strategies of doing so. We need to be more authentic, we need to engage in purposeful actions, and we need to humanize our interactions. We've did some great research on how, from a social science perspective, how companies can build trust, but yeah, it's definitely important to think about your purpose. We also know from a collaboration with a professor in marketing here in Amsterdam that having a purpose can actually provide shareholder value on the long term. So it really also provides some financial benefits. Second trend, connected society. Whereas lots of trend watchers can tell you everything about technology, there are not that many that have taken the liberty to deep dive in why people actually adopt technologies and what kind of needs are driving that adoption. And what we do in this connected society trend is we look at what is driving the adoption of technology, but then subsequently also what type of new behavior is occurring now that we have adopted all these new technologies. And it's great to find out how people have this relation with technology. And one of the big threats we see is that really people used to think in terms of, can technology do what we want? And actually the answer is often yes. But now people are also wondering, do we actually want what technology can do? So when becoming more data-driven, or when you want to adopt artificial intelligence, we really have to make sure that we give people a sense of control, and that we also cover the ethical part of using technology, because it's very important in that forming of relation between tech and people. Third trend within this societal trends is the visual culture trend. This is really a branding and communication trend. We live in a world full of advertising, full of brands, and it's really difficult to stand out. How do you do that? It's by communicating more smart, more intelligent, more playful, and by doing so you have to understand what is driving the new visual dialect that is also occurring on all these different types of social media, and why younger generations tend to embrace that new visual dialect more than other generations. Really a communication trend. And the fourth trend is the quest for happiness, and it's about the shift from thinking about your physical health to thinking about your mental health. Back in the days, you were healthy when your body just worked, when your knees were not broken, when you can still, when you're physically healthy. Nowadays, being healthy also has a lot to do with how you feel mentally, and there is a strong relation between a sound mind and a sound body. A happy person also feels more healthy, and a healthy person also feels more happy. So what we also see in this quest for happiness trend is that people are looking for more meaning in life. So they're really engaging also into new practices, from yoga to mindfulness to different type of diets. So very important trend, especially for example, food and beverages, or the retail sector, or clothing, sports apparel, these kind of industries. So also a very important trend. Now, generation thinking is also a very useful way of segmenting. Why? Because as we live in a world in which many corporates gather lots of data, generation thinking, but also gender thinking, is a really actionable way of segmenting your target groups. Most companies know from their big data how old someone is, or whether their customer is a man or a female. Now, by using our trends, we can open up a huge box of insights to really understand what these people in your big data are about and what is driving their behavior. So it's really a good way to help your marketing teams to understand customers better, but also to provide these actionable inspiration to create better propositions and communication. So hopefully I've shared some relevant and useful insights for you guys. We've covered quite a lot. We have talked about 10 trends. We have 3 insights on each trend, and hopefully it gave you some inspiration to food for thought to think about what's coming next in the future. Please reach out to us if you have any questions. Connect with us on LinkedIn. We're very happy to hear how you have experienced this webinar. So hopefully we meet somewhere in the offline world once. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.